Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the 9 p.m. live English news edition. Here are the top stories. The head of state presides over the ceremony to launch the sovereign fund of Djibouti. After the deadly floods, the Nile begins its decrease. Hello, welcome again. Welcome for having the news in details. The head of state, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Margele, early this morning proceeded to the official launch of the Sovereign Fund of the Republic of Djibouti. This event of undisputed importance has brought together all members of government, economists, renowned international experts who accompanied the launch of the fund since its inception. True instrument of accelerated economic growth, the sovereign funds has a capital of $1.5 billion within 10 years, according to the law of March 29, which established it. The SDF is an innovative tool that brings a different perspective on the development and economic transformation of Djibouti. In other words, it reflects the ambition in Djibouti and lays the foundation for a model based on economic growth favorable to the development and position of Djibouti in the region. The SDF therefore goes to respond to a need for a new phase of national economic emergence with a strong impact on society and its economy. Of course, the creation of employment and wealth is the rendezvous, and above all, an optimization of enterprises so that the private sector can play a leading role in economic growth. The emergence of the SDF in the Djiboutian economic landscape is an instrument of public policy for development. It reflects today the ambition of the Republic of Djibouti and its government to write a new page in its history, that of economy diversification, and build a new growth model in line with the evolution of globalization. This successful day clearly embodies the ambition of the Republic of Djibouti to become the Singapore of Horn of Africa. At the end of this meeting, the members of its government and the experts brought their stones to the buildings, but also their experiences on best practices, all this under the principle of Santiago. In their speech, the Master Amir Johangir recalled that the Sovereign Fund was in the standards and good practices that define the principles of Santiago. As for him, the General Manager of the Sovereign Fund, Mahmoud Mbaye, with an experience of several years, underlined that the SDF will serve as a catalyst for the private sector. We listen to them.
Texte fondateur du FST dont la loi qui a été
The founding text of the DSF, including the law that has been promulgated and comes into force on March 29, 2020, aimed at designing a survey fund that is set up in the form of private law limited company. The state of Djibouti is and will remain the sole shareholder, as stated by the President of the Republic, and is placed under the supervision of the Presidency of the Republic. We have designed the organization of the Djibouti Sovereign Fund from a legal standpoint so that it is a modern and effective instrument at the service of the state and the people of Djibouti. The founding texts of the DSF, including the law I mentioned, but also the implementing decrees and its statutes, aim to establish principles of good governance, transparency, and control, and this in line with these famous Ecuadorian principles that have been referred to, which are principles and practices generally accepted in sovereign wealth funds internationally.
de transparence et de contrôle.
Je suis très heureux d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui.
I am very pleased to be with you today to support the project, which is one of the flagship projects of the President of the Republic, which is part of the 2035 vision for the development of the Republic of Djibouti. But the focus is really to establish an institution that meets international standards with impeccable governance, very structured. The focus will be to act promptly and manage national resources as well as possible. The focus is also to develop some form of balance and support the diversification of the national economy.
Et d'accompagner la diversification de l'économie nationale.
The former Prime Minister and former candidate for the presidency of Benin, Lionel Sinzu, who took the floor, spoke of the few countries that Djibouti today joined, which has sovereign fund. He mentioned, among other things, their experiences and practices. The Chamber of Commerce President, Mr. Yusuf Moussa Dewal, also said that the private sector will play an important role to be a vector of economic growth. Here, what they said.
Je voudrais dire que nous nous effaçons en faisant aujourd'hui l'éloge de ce qui a été réalisé. Nous nous effaçons.
I would like to say that we are fading away today in praise of what has been achieved. We are fading away with respect to what has been conducted under your authority and with your long-term vision by the public authorities. I would like to say that we have been fortunate enough to participate in public affairs in Africa, in our countries, which we would like to salute here for the speed, efficiency, and consistency and responsiveness of your presidential services. The Ministry of Economy, Finance, all the ministries in the state of Inspectorate General, it has been an extremely satisfying work for advice, because between the moment just over a year when you expressed your vision and the vote on the law of March 29, 2020, we have had, in terms of setting up a new institution compared to anything else in the world, a remarkable speed and consistency of implementation.
Cette initiative, Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la République, ne pourrait être prise à un meilleur moment.
This initiative, Your Excellency, Mr. President of the Republic, could be a better time to ensure the takeoff of our growth, to sustain the financial benefits of our investments, the creation of this National Investment and Intergenerational Savings Fund designed to invest in projects with a positive impact on the economy and on the long-term management of financial resources for future generations, can only be validated by all. I am therefore pleased, Your Excellency, that the legal framework that was provided for the creation of this fund, the new body could also intervene in the form of support fund for innovations or for projects with very high employment potential carried out by private national entities. As you so rightly said, Mr. President, the Djibouti Chamber of Commerce as a whole, the sector and the private sector remains willing to work closely with these new institutions to enable greater involvement of the private sector in the activities of the fund. On this point, precisely, we would like, Excellency Mr. President, to take the opportunity to suggest an active participation of the private sector in the governance of these funds. I am pleased that today, thanks to this body, the Republic of Djibouti has a mechanism that can invest in priority sectors for the country, especially since the current post-COVID-19 context. It is difficult to ensure the financing of development projects through foreign investment only.
The Board of Directors Chairman of the Sovereign Fund, Mr. Mohamed Isiki Kayat, recalled that the SDF is a real management and investments instrument that meets the need to boost a new phase of national economic emergence by providing an efficient and flexible instrument of action, mobilizing means armed with real investment capacities. Let's listen to it.
En cette période de crise sanitaire et économique,
in this period of health and economic crisis, the establishment of these funds is extremely timely, as its missions will be to play a counter-cyclical role in economic recovery in order to curb effects of external shocks such as pandemics. In addition to this cyclical support, the fund will above all play a much more strategical role in transforming and accelerating the development of our country. Many of the countries that have adopted it have made considerable progress in Europe, Asia, and even more recently in Africa. It responds to a need to give impetus to a new phase of our development policy, and its first objective will be to implement Vision 2035 by investing in transformational projects.
For his part, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Ilyas Moussa Dawale, has made a history of the Djiboutian economy in recent years in a fresco showing the figures of growth. He also evoked the transition to a new economic model for a better diversification.
Dans un premier temps, dès ma nomination, Monsieur le Président, vous avez beaucoup insisté sur
I remember, first of all, upon my appointment, Mr. President, you placed great emphasis on the paradigm shift in the conduct of public policy in the Republic of Djibouti, much through strategic planning to achieve rapid diversification of our economy. And at that time, we had worked with friends of the bank on a document called Diagnostic Analysis of Djibouti's Growth Model. And the conclusion at the time, in early 2012, was made to say that the current growth model, Djibouti 2012, was no longer sustainable. Was no longer sustainable because I live in the sector and very little diversified, with many opportunities were still underexploited. This report was interesting to deep in and maximize the comparative advantages and absolute advantages of Djibouti, including in the area of logistics. We have therefore from Agnostic made the study on the vision, your vision, which we shared with all the peoples of Djibouti had shared in the long term, with sequences, sectional strategies, including what we are currently doing. The second phase here, at the same time, there were major decisions taken, Mr. President, to develop infrastructure and thus maximize Djibouti's absolute and comparative advantages.
And finally, the head of state, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Margeli, in the first part of his speech described the SDF as a tool for growth and accelerated economic transformation. Let's listen to the number one of the Republic.
الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Mesdames et messieurs les ministres et membres du gouvernement, messieurs les membres du conseil d'administration du Fonds souverain de Djibouti, distingués invités, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Distinguished ministers and members of the government, members of the board of directors of the Sovereign Fund of Djibouti, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the participants in this forum for being here today in this place to mark a particularly important event in the life of our country, the official launch of the Djibouti Sovereign Fund, a new instrument for accelerated economic development. I would like in particular to thank our friends and partners who participated in this project, who made the trip to mark this moment with their presence. Welcome to Djibouti. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, in the face of challenges, our country has always been able to rely on its national genius to raise to the occasion. Since our independence in June 1977, we have constantly adjusted to guarantee our sovereignty, independence, and security, and we have constantly acted to chart a path of sustainable development despite the constraints of our territory. Our essential objectives has always been the economic emergence, development, and well-being of our citizens. The COVID-19 pandemic has not denied this capacity to fight. It showed that the Republic could count on its own forces to face the difficulties of the present, while maintaining a long-term strategic policy. Djibouti is not a rich country. The subsoil is not gorged with raw materials. The climate is hot, semi-desert, water is precious and rare commodity. But we have ambition. We have been able to use our geographical location to build a development project, a project for the future at the crossroads of Asia and Africa, on the road to the Suez Canal and Europe, guardian of the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. Djibouti is ideally positioned on one of the most active and strategic trade routes in the world. Our traditions are those of exchange and openness. We are people of land and sea. Faithful to this tradition, we have defined our course, our strategy to become a commercial, logistical, port, and digital hub that cannot be ignored. Investing in infrastructure to meet this requirement, develop upstream and downstream through a dynamic private sector, modernize our companies, particularly those in a public sector, to meet the challenges of the future. For 2 decades, we have collectively worked hard to achieve tangible results, a recognized legal and financial framework, a stable and convertible currency, world-class port and transportation structures, and mutually beneficial links with our major regional and international partners. The growth rate, 8% in 2018 and 7% in 2019, places our country among the continent's most dynamic economies. Our national wealth is growing, underscored by our progression in international rankings. It has more than quintupled in 20 years, reaching a GDP of nearly 3 billion. The growth, the constant improvement of the legal and judicial framework supports the attractiveness of our country. With a tangible result, for nearly a decade, private foreign investment has been taking off. It is now a question of passing a qualitative milestone to boast a new phase of our development, to accelerate the pace, to modernize even more, so that we are always in tune with the changes in the world around us, and to meet the legitimate needs of Djiboutians. We must act for a better distribution of our efforts on the national territory, act to prioritize education, training, and employment of our youth. We must be able to invest and co-invest in a certain manner on major structural projects. We must further promote the emergence of a diversified and competitive private sector. We need to increase our integration with the region, with our brotherly and neighboring countries, with Ethiopia in particular, of which we are one of the gateways to the world.
Favoriser plus encore l'émergence d'un secteur privé diversifié et compétitif. Il nous faut accentuer notre intégration avec la région, avec nos pays frères et voisins, et en particulier l'Éthiopie, dont nous sommes l'une des portes sur le monde.
Also in his statement, the President of the Republic mentioned the mission of the SDF, which is, he said, to mobilize the resources of Djibouti, to centralize them, to better control our projects, to strongly emphasize a room for maneuver and negotiation, to prioritize our national and strategic interests. Let's listen to him again.
Mesdames et messieurs, chers invités, tous ces objectifs de modernisation, d'adaptation, de croissance sont inscrits dans la vision 2035, la stratégie qui guide notre action à long terme.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, all these objectives of modernization, adaptation, and growth are enshrined in Vision 2035, the strategy that guides our long-term action. This strategy will be able to benefit from a new instrument of action, mobilizing resources, and one that differs from traditional approaches to development. This tool for growth and accelerated economic transformation is the Servant Fund of Djibouti. The fund was created by the Act of March 29, 2020. The structures are gradually being put in place. The team is getting organized. It will be operational very quickly. The fund aims to mobilize the resources of Djibouti, to centralize them in a way to create weight, leverage, as our Anglo-Saxon friends say, to better control our projects, to strongly accentuate our room for maneuver and negotiation, to focus on our national and strategic interests, to be a necessary, soiled, and committed partner sought by Djiboutian and international investors. It is to optimize our means to invest in the real economy, business, competitiveness, the private sector, the development of a made in Djibouti. The fund will also be responsible for supporting the management and strategy of public enterprises in the competitive sector. It will have to represent the state shareholder and increase competitiveness. The fund embodies our desire to move up to a value chain, to integrate the top of the curve in terms of decision-making capacity, capacity of action, return on investment, know-how. This capacity to act is a central element of our project. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, this is important and I emphasize it. The fund will create growth, promote investment, but it is above all an effective instrument of development serving the Djiboutians. Through its activity, the fund will participate actively in job creation, in the general rise in living standards. The sole shareholder of the fund is and will remain the state of Djibouti. Its effectiveness will be measured by the implementation of projects, by its profitability, but also and above all by its ability to generate reserves for generations to come up to the creation of a new class of entrepreneurs. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, our aspect is particularly essential to the success of this project, to its legitimacy vis-à-vis the citizens of Djibouti and vis-à-vis its national and international partners, is that of governance and transparency. In this area, we are determined to implement best practices in terms of its accountability and independence of its management bodies, governance, transparency, and performance in accordance with Djibouti law and accepted international principles in this area. A management team has been set up, as well as governments and audit bodies, women and men. Djiboutian executives will be called upon to participate in this ambition. African and international talents as well. We must succeed. What we are seeking to achieve is a modern, socially inclusive economy capable of creating an environment conducive to the flourishing and development of private initiative. We must enable Djibouti's talent to undertake to participate in the industrialization of our nation and to position our country as a center of excellence, competitiveness, and innovation. In this spirit, we must also strengthen the management and governance of our public heritage. The fund is a key tool in our ambition, but beyond the implementation of this financial instrument, we are all concerned by this demand for modernization. Our ministers, our political leaders, our entrepreneurs, our public sector managers, our executives, our young people, civil society actors, all Djiboutians must be part of this essential step for our common future. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, thank you once again for your presence and your attention, and I now leave the floor to professionals and experts to engage in a discussion, a productive exchange on the Servant Fund of Djibouti, its functioning, and its objectives.
Je vous remercie encore une fois de votre présence et de votre attention. Et je laisse maintenant la parole aux professionnels et aux experts pour engager une discussion, un échange productif sur le Fonds souverain de Djibouti, son fonctionnement et ses objectifs. Et je vous remercie.
It was the President of the Republic, Mr. Ismail Margele, and now within the program of Zero Slums, the General Director of the Agency for Urban Rehabilitation and Social Housing, Mr. Abdurrahman Ali Ahmed, and the Secretary General, Mr. Abdurrahman Ali Ahmed, and the General Secretary of the Ministry of Social Affairs and Solidarity, Mrs. Ifrah Ali Ahmed, proceeded this morning on the site of Balbala Adi to the partial opening of a first 500-meter section of the road to open up the neighborhood 9 under construction. This opening ceremony was attended by the Sub-Prefecture of the 4th District, officials of the National Police, the representative of the ADR, and several executives of the public administration and civil society. The entire delegation walked along the entire track after having proceeded to the partial opening of the completed section. In addition, the different actors of the project were able to present a sample of explanation with some technical details and other social considerations. The Directorate of the Hydrocarbons and the General Directorate of Civil Protection carried out a labor inspection at the gas proxy company in order to examine the effectiveness of civil protection. The objective of this work inspection within the company placed the respect of the study and regulation of civil security techniques. The Directorate of Civil Protection is always at the disposal of technical protection and prevention against fire and to enforce the policy of security stocks of crude oil and refined products of the proxy gas company, Fabtech. The inspection of this company saw the participation of the Director of the Hydrocarbons, Wahib Ali Abullah Hassan Ibrahim, Operations Commander of Civil Protection, as well as other responsible for civil protection. Noted that the officials have given some missing instruction for the respect of the company rules to control the fire damage of this company. Now, as part of the launch of the activities for youth entrepreneurship training project conducted jointly by the Director of the Egyptian Social Development Agency (ADDS), Mr. Mahdi Mahmoud, and the Director of the CDC Foundation, the President of the EOJ Foundation, Mr. Mohammed Ali Usman, welcomed this Sunday at the Nasib City and Abdul Fattah Sahel Suleiman, accompanied by an expert in the micro enterprise, namely Abdul Latif Mohammed Abdullahi. It is for these various executives of the ADDS and the state, the Secretary for Youth Sport, to implement in this neighborhood the project of training young people to entrepreneurship funded by the European Union. Indeed, with the arrival on the job market of a young population that is increasingly educated and innovative, it is necessary to promote new strategy allowing young people to create their jobs and contribute positively to the economy and society. Within the framework of this project, the managers of the AGDS and the Secretary for Youth Sports will first provide a 2-month training focused in the field of entrepreneurship before submitting a business plan competition to the participants. This program is an enriching project that facilitates the young project leader to realize their dream, and we encourage all those responsible for this forge project who have made a positive contribution to the economy and society. Now, since the President of the Republic's regional decentralization body took office in the early 2000s, each region of the interior has been aspiring to a greater self-reliance in all areas of its citizens' lives. The day-to-day agency, or the office that facilitates multiple services in Aska City, in partnership with the Siad Driving School, has opened a local branch for learning to drive vehicles. Many of the Asajok, especially young people, are learning to drive and are actively participating in the training. Now there is no need to travel to the capital city and no more endless trip back and forth. Asajok who want to take their driver's license now have a sign in their own city. Moving now to international news, now the Nile has begun its receding after having reached in recent weeks a historic level causing deadly floods, the Sudanese Ministry of Water and Irrigation said Sunday. The level of the river had reached 17.67 meters on September 7, an absolute record for a century, and the beginning of the surveys before slowly starting its regression to reach 17.36 meters on Sunday. The water levels of the Nile are dropping in most of the monitoring stations, the minister said Sunday in a statement. Violent floods have affected almost all of Sudan since the end of July. They have caused the death of 106 people and 54 others have been injured, according to the latest assessment of the Sudanese Civil Defense. Much agricultural land has also been destroyed. More than 500,000 Sudanese are affected by the floods, the United Nations said Thursday. On Tuesday, September 8, editors notes 557 people were affected by the floods in 17 of the 18 states that make up Sudan, and the most affected are the region of Khartoum, North Darfur, and Sinnar, noted the reports of the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. This is it for this edition of 9 p.m. Thank you for watching us and have a wonderful night.